This is hands down the most important moment in To Your Eternity's history, because Bond's death sets in motion Fushi being able to see the dead. Now, is there a possibility that when he gains Bond's form, he couldn't see the dead? Sure, we could say maybe that's a possibility. But given the fundamentals of like Tonari building her body to be resistant to poison, it feels like what the person is and their skills come with the new body. So that means with this death, he should be able to see the spirits that have been wandering with him this entire time. So it will only be a matter of time before Bond comes back, because Bond's not the type of person who's going to just up and move to heaven or reincarnate whatever happens to spirits who decide to move on from the world. As we see, some characters do, as in the case of the boy from episode 1, he doesn't follow Fushi. Other characters like Tonari do. So those characters it's just a matter of time before they come back. The thing is with bringing people back, it feels guaranteed that he would lose the body, he would lose their abilities. So with Fushi still in a world that is full of threats, he can't just bring back everyone, otherwise he would lose everything. So Bond might be gone for some time, maybe 100 years, maybe 1,000 years potentially. But I think it's only now a matter of time before Fushi agrees that I'm gonna bring everyone that I care for back, but he's gonna have to wait for the world, or at the very least, war to stop popping up, because he needs all the help he can get. For Bond being my favorite character in this show, hands down, I was never more okay with a character dying than this moment, because for Fushi, yes, there's ways for him to know about that without Bond dying, but there's something about him being able to see it, rather than just having a character tell him, hey, you can see the spirits of the dead following you, right? There's people following you, those forms you change into, they're actually right beside you. It's a lot different for him to be able to have a conversation with them, similar to how Bond is. It would be the most critical stab one-hit KO if he gains Bond's form and can't speak to the dead, then I'd have a much different tune. But as it stands, this feels incredibly important for Bond to die, give that ability to Fushi, and then for him to be able to reconnect to those spirits, because if you really look at what Fushi did at the end of the episode, it really feels like he's kind of come to a new realization. After basically becoming molten lava and escaping, he just feels a lot more mature in a lot of ways. For someone who this entire time has wished he could bring people back, I think he's gonna more or less say, I know I can't bring you back just yet. Like, maybe there's certain forms he could, like, at this particular moment. Does he really need March's form? Probably not. But, you know, most of the forms, like Tonari, Bond's kind of a wild card, because I think Bond could be brought back in this moment, because it could serve as a political, like, thing of like, hey, you wanted proof that more or less I'm a servant of God? Well, how about bringing back the chosen king? That could make sense, but I think there's a lot of forms he needs to keep for the time being, and I think that's going to be an incredibly interesting turn of events, because this episode in the past month has been blowing my mind, and I do have full live reactions available to all the episodes, you know, of this season, because it's just been absolutely crazy, so consider that if you so wish. But this episode was just so great, because for literally the past month, it's been banger after banger after banger after banger of To Your Eternity quality, and just to see what happened to Fushi, because a lot of people brought up like he should be able to use the thing that basically imprisoned him, right? That molten lava. But the issue, which they quickly bring up, is that he stays conscious for like a few seconds and then passes out for a handful of minutes. Like, even if you can maybe burn your way out of it, how in the actual hell is someone like that going to stay awake? And the fact that a few weeks passed before he actually could, and I thought what was going to happen, I think everyone thought, like when it started like erupting and was like morphing and people were cheering or sweating and shitting their pants, the fact that I thought he was about to burst out and be like, hey bitches, I'm back, instead, he just made a statue of himself to make it look like he's still trapped as he flies away and sets his boys free. And I'm like, that is such a clever way to kind of like get around an issue of them immediately following you or attacking you and things like that. And it's kind of interesting, right? Because Bond's sacrifice, in a lot of ways, it could be avoided. Bond didn't have to say like, you know, he could have just basically said, praise Jesus, you know what, he's a demon, let me out, I worship God. But he has honor, he has integrity, and he's actually willing to let his brother rule in his place. But I think with him most likely now being able to talk with Fushi when he gets his form, it's going to be an interesting conversation, because there's two directions I see this going. Bond immediately gets brought back, which then in return proves him to be a chosen king. He very much seems selfless at this point. Or they're going to wait a long time before bringing all of them back. Maybe he'll just do it in one big go, but you'll have to wait for the world to be safe. There's no way you go about basically giving up all your forms when the knockers will become a knockin'. So it's hard to say the direction they'll go, but either way, characters are coming back. I don't think there's any ifs, ands, or buts at this point. Characters will come back. He'll most likely be able to talk to them now because of Bond's sacrifice, and even if, say, he can't talk to those forms, eventually he's gonna realize it, right? Because most likely, someone like Toto now knows that Bond could see spirits, right? So in return, Toto could end up telling Fushi. So even if he couldn't see it, he could then start putting 2 and 2 together and maybe even confront the Watcher about it. Like, that's a possibility as well. But either way, it was a pretty exciting episode. Like, the first 10 minutes went in a completely different direction than I was anticipating, and it really threw me for a loop. But I love seeing Bond go from someone who felt very selfish, you know, like trying to take bread from this kid, and then to see how prior to his death moments or building up to that, he actually stopped taking the extra food from Toto and saying, oh, you're fat, you can burn it off, sort of a thing. And the way, like, he threw it in, like, the guard's face when, you know, they're hounding him, prove that you're some servant of God, sort of a thing, and then using the mother's death and seeing the poor boy, man, like, the boy was, like, comedy gold at certain points, but mostly I just felt so bad that eating a little bit of bread and then saving all of it for the mom just broke your heart when you saw that. At least I know it did for me. And I mean, as someone who thought To Your Eternity was at a 10 out of 10 season, it's crazy to see how much better I think this arc of To Your Eternity has been, and just what it's done for Fushi's character. Like, it just feels like there's such a great way of going about resurrection right now, where there's, like, crucial players that you could bring back at any particular moment that you'd want to keep around without removing the threat of death. Because Fushi bringing everyone back right now would make it so he has no forms other than the boy, right? Because the boy doesn't follow him, so he could keep that form. And yes, he can use molten lava and he has weapons, but you need those different forms and you need all the help you can get to deal with the knockers. So it prevents it from just immediately bringing anyone back, but that also gives the possibility of doing so for narrative purposes, like potentially bringing back a fallen king, which then could turn a kingdom completely upside on its head and really throw the church for a loop. But either way, there's a lot of really interesting potential, and for the ability to resurrect the dead, not feeling like it will remove the threat of, like, death, because people could still die and he might not be able to bring them back right away because he needs their form, or it would cause too much of a ruckus in the political landscape, right? It just is a very interesting concept, and I think To Your Eternity is probably handling it the best I've seen, at least based on, in theory, where that kind of concept could go in the future that I think I've experienced. Not only just in anime, but I think in just period with fiction with this whole concept. And that's why I love this author. There's so much potential. I mean, they already have, like, working cranes, all things considered, so really it is only a matter of time before 100, 200 years from now, like, technology is going to look a lot more modern than I think I was initially anticipating in a world like this, and I'm interested to see how Fushi will kind of evolve with this world and the way he'll deal with these threats, because it really is night and day comparing where Fushi's at mentally from the beginning of the show to where he currently is now, and it's pretty damn impressive. But I'll pass the torch over to you. I personally think this is the most important, the most crucial death that we needed to see happen so it can help shape the future, but let me know your feelings down below. Leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here. Like I mentioned, there is a full live reaction available on the Patreon. You can also get video shoutouts, so do consider that if you so wish. So, till next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.